Welcome, everybody. This is John Paul, Dr. Speed Selling, and this is Raging Verbalist number 217. If you're new, welcome. Glad that you're here. If you're just finding us for the first time, glad that you're here. We're on YouTube every Friday and also on Facebook group Position to Win Book, which happens to be, my book. So that's even clever, isn't it? So don't veer off into politics much, mostly topics that pop into my head that I think we need to go over. And all of that, and so get ready, get excited, and also hit that notification if you want to be annoyed. Thumbs up, please, and subscribe. And with me, as always, but playing hurt today, so we have to keep that in mind, is the ever lovely Sandra, who is fighting back illness to be on this call. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, how are you doing?
I think I'm getting.
You're all choked up. I know, sympathy, pain.
I know that.
Goodness.
All right. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about today? What are we going over? So.
All right. So this is the Gen Z disaster. So who exactly falls into the category of Gen Z?
Well, it's always interesting when you look at demographics and when we make these kind of, calls and all of that, and then it becomes something that people talk about. So Gen Z, according to demographers, were born between 1997 and 2012. And that roughly means that the youngest ones are 12 years old and the oldest ones are 27. And, that kind of brackets that and gives you a sense of it. It also is going to tell us a lot because hopefully when we get done with today, you'll understand Gen Z better than you knew it before. And more importantly, how to deal with this world that we live in. And yes, we can all look at it if you're older and say the world is going to hell in a handbasket. How will these people ever take over? That is a continuous generational statement. However, the thing just keeps spinning. So, okay, what's the next question?
All right. Can you give some context about other generations?
So if you're in business, because we talk a lot about business and entrepreneurship, and you are not really serious about understanding demography, Peter Drucker talked about this is the giant waves that go through society. It is the best predictable trend that you can ever see. So my suggestion to you is get serious about it. So let's kind of quickly go through this, and we'll go in reverse order, if you will. So Gen Z, now there is Generation Alpha, but that's just now coming about. So they're younger. So let's not think too much about them. So we're talking about Gen Z. Before the Gen Zs were the Millennials. Millennials were 1981 to 96, and they're 28 to 43. And they're Millennials because part of what demographers look up is when someone comes of age. It isn't when exactly they were born, starts to when they came of age. Gen X is before that, and that was from 1965 to 1980, 15-year period. And that was, they're between 44 and 59. And of course, that was just after the baby boomers. And there's two kinds of baby boomers. There are the late boomers, which were from 55 to 64, and they're 60 to 69. And then you have boomers, the first boomers, which were from 1946 to 54. That's because, of course, the soldiers came home and everybody decided globally, by the way, there was a baby boom because the World War was over and away they went. And the first boomers are anywhere from 70 to 78. And then we have what were called the post-war. And this would also be called the silent generation by some. And they were born from 28 to 45. I know we're doing a lot of numbers, but it's important to kind of get your head wrapped around it. So they're 79 to 96. And then you have what was genuinely or nominally called maybe the greatest generation, of World War II generation, and they were actually from 1922 to 1927. And so if they're still alive today, my father was in this, my mother was in this group. They were 97 to 102. Both my parents are gone, but that's kind of the lay of the land. And the reason why that's important is that every single generation has their own mark, has their own issues, has their own, macro things that they live through. So that's what takes place. And one of the interesting things about Gen Zers is that Gen Zers, of course, have always lived. If you were born from 97 on, there was this thing called the internet that's always been there. So it isn't like the internet is new to them. So everybody before Gen Z, the internet is, in varying degrees kind of new to everybody. So that's kind of the context of other generations. And we're going to focus, of course, today on Gen Z.
All right. And is there a specific formative age people go through?
Well, there's lots of theories, but I really like Dr. Morris Massey. And Massey talks about how that if you want to understand yourself, understand people, understand where you're coming from, is look at the year that you turned 10 years old, whatever that year was. And then really study that year and understand that that year really shaped and molded and gave you the external cues of what started to take place. And that, I think, has a lot of validity, and it has validity for every generation, but in particular Gen Z, because of course, what happened during that period of time? What were the events that took place? Well, how about the Great Recession? How about a real change in how the world was going? The internet was young when they started, but it was rapidly altering so many businesses, and so many things changed and closed and took place, and what was taking shape. And I think that that's a really good way to measure things. And so it's a good exercise. I mean, I know sometimes it's, you don't know somebody's exact age, but if you know their age and you want to handicap them, which is what I call it, you want to figure out where they're coming from, find out where they were when they were 10 and how the world shaped their life going forward. Because when you're 10 years old, first off, you're now in double digits, and you are now becoming much more self-aware, and therefore you're more aware of a larger, bigger world than just, your family and your extended family and your, parents, friends, and whatever they do. So that's a big formative year. And also you can look at your brothers and sisters and other siblings if you have them, or cousins and all of that. And you can see that they experience things differently because they came of age at a different 10-year-old perspective and 10-year-old point.
And why does there appear to be such a distinct difference with those in Gen Z?
I think there's really several things that happened to Gen Z and have taken place, which have shaped them in a very unique way. I mean, every person gets shaped differently. But first off is this whole technology explosion, and this influence of technology is out there. If we think about, the iPhone coming out in 2007, that would have an effect, because if you were born in, 97 and, you're 10 years old and here comes this iPhone. So you never really lived in a period of time when there wasn't a smartphone around, and smartphones have really changed perspective. So there's this whole technological influence, and that means it has an impact on communications, on learning, on entertainment. I'll never forget sitting on an airplane, and obviously this person was a Gen Z person, and she was sitting there, and she was complaining that that one of the things that the cell phone company did is they offered her free Netflix, but she was pissed off because they degraded the picture quality, as if sitting there looking at a 6.1-inch screen, you're going to ever look at high def and go, wow, I can really tell the difference. I guess you might be able to, but considering that, it really doesn't matter that much. So I think that, technology, the 2008 housing crisis was massive to Gen Z. It hit them. It's hard to put into context. By the way, the amount of misinformation out there is huge on this, and we're not going to get into that whole thing. I lived through it. In fact, I predicted it 2 years before it started. Couldn't get a lot of people to listen to me, including my clients who were in the mortgage industry, about that coming and pending situation. So they lived through that. They have a whole different sense about diversity and kind of an embracing of it, because again, there are things that were usually not talked about are talked about a lot more. So they kind of are exposed to lots of diversity, and they believe that this is important to know this. Also, they have the sense that they want to be more diverse, so that's kind of interesting. And then I think the final is that there's the whole recognition that they're involved in a global interconnectivity has a sense of driving Gen Z in a different way. Now, having said all those things, part of what we have to do is understand how people function, how they're put together. I think that the reality is that when somebody has this, awakening, if you will, or this availability of information, is that part of the downside of it is that you can get information that's really not real, it's not true, or it's not really going to affect you. So therefore, you're putting emphasis in the wrong place. Whatever you focus on, you end up getting more of. And that brings us to the most important thing that we can talk about today, which is, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're just somebody who's kind of curious about that, one of the things that I absolutely believe, and I know for a fact, is that most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. That means 300 seconds. You're making decisions that are going to either put you in the right place or on the path to ruin. And it just takes you 3 to 5 years to realize it, position to win. And of course, you can pick this up in Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million. The physical copy, you can also go to positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com, and I'll inscribe it and sign it for you. Also, you can get it in Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBooks. And also, if you're a person who wants to be a digital nomad, check out Remote Work for a Better World. We wrote it because of the pandemic that was rolling along, but more importantly, we also wrote it because people suck at doing things remotely when they really shouldn't. Okay, what is our next question, Sandra?
All right. Given your turnaround experience of firing and hiring people, what stands out about those in Gen Z?
Well, I think that the one thing that stands out is that when you look at the reality of how one has to work and what has to take place, is that when I would go in and look at a group of employees, and I'm talking about all different ages, all different types, one of the things that always surprises me is how many people don't ask themselves, what value do I bring to the organization? And this is a broad statement, but I believe that because of the way that technology provides so much instant gratification and this overstimulation, and also looking at other people and saying, wow, here's an influencer who's making, gazillions of dollars, or they have they're flying around the world and they're doing all these other things. I just want to point out that creates what I would call unrealistic expectations. And anybody who has unrealistic expectations is setting themselves up for a fall. So I think unrealistic expectations is a serious problem. I think that the Gen Zers have an opportunity if they get their head really on straight about things. And that doesn't mean that you're listening to what everybody says, but it's just really understand that you have to always provide value to whatever relationship you're going to do. Value for value. Again, I'm an ardent libertarian, is important to really think about. So I think that's one of the issues. I think that there's a certain amount of hard to work with, because obviously, if you can get every answer that you ever needed to get by just clicking and typing it into a phone, what you do, or even just speaking it and it tells you stuff, that it gives you a sense of, I don't really need to know these things. And the fundamentals are really important to know, because if not, you can be, in AI circles, it's called hallucinations. I just did this the other day and typed in some stuff, got in some stuff into Google, asked them some questions, and of course, Google didn't want to give me the answer because, of course, there's a certain bias to it. Now, I know there was a bias, so I worked around it. Also, there's a sense of since so many who are in Gen Z are still living with their parents, and this is like a throwback to decades before, right? Because these cycles repeat themselves. And getting to the point of where you're not confident enough that you bring like your mom to the job interview. I mean, I'm telling you, that's really not a cool thing. I mean, it's okay. We may all love your mom. We all may think that's cool. Mom may do stuff for you, but I'm going to tell you that self-sufficiency is really important. And I think that this is a really big issue because if you have a bunch of these people, I'm talking about, and again, I'm generalizing, you get a whole generation of people who think that, well, I can always get somebody else. Well, I'm going to tell you, that you're not. You got to be able to do it on your own. And my final part of it is that if in fact you think that these are tough times, and again, I've been through tough times, what I'm going to tell you is that you need to have and this is the biggest key. If you don't have mental toughness, if you don't have that mental toughness built into you, the world is going to kick your ass from here to there. And, just wait for what the future will hold for you, because Murphy always rides for free. All right, what do we have next?
All right. Is it legitimate to feel lied to if you're in Gen Z?
Well, I think that part of that mistrust, part of that sense of being lied to is stemming from experiences of being told, listen, all you have to do is go to college and you get a degree, and then this is all going to work out, and this is going to take place. And there was never contextualized. Now, whenever you look at averages, like when somebody says, oh, hey, the average Harvard graduate makes, $180,000 a year or whatever. Well, there's a hedge fund manager making $35 million a year who kind of brings up the average of people who are making, working as a barista or something. So I think that part of that feeling like I was lied to goes back to, and this is not new, it's multi-generational, but I did all the right things, but I didn't get the result that I feel that was promised to me. So let me give you a way to clear out your head. Nothing is promised to you on this planet that I know of, unless you got a big inheritance. And if you do, give us a call quick. But if you don't have that, if you don't have those kinds of big bucks behind you, you are not going to be able to say, I don't have to go out and actually work hard and do this. So I think that there is this overload of information. There's an overconsumption. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of pitches. I am very surprised to see how many who are taken advantage of with really just huckster bullshit. With it's a new guy, it's a new woman, it's a new somebody who sits there and says, oh, you're going to be able to do all of these things. You don't have to worry about having a day gig because, well, you're going to go out and have this or that. And I appreciate entrepreneurship, but I have been through those. We all have, who are going on that journey. And it's how you survive to get to that realistic standpoint and what you need to do. So have they been lied to? Well, they're self-delusional if they believe that these stories are true. And more importantly, if their family says, listen, you're going to go to college, it's the most important thing. And I can tell you that it is important to know things. And if you want to have a life based upon performance, which is what my life has been, that is a different road than the other way. Because here's the thing, no excuses, no complaining, no bitching, no whining, no moaning. That's performance. However, if you want to go get something that has much higher security, then what you do is you want to go a more traditional route. So are they being lied to? Maybe, but there's that gullibility factor. You got to ring it out, because, I understand if you were told that you're going to go out and get a degree in whatever and it's going to pay off, not even close. Be smart enough, do analysis, and figure out what works and what doesn't work. Okay, what's next?
And what do you think causes this?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the immediacy, the fact that it used to be that, and there was a book that was written that was called The First 4 Minutes of Contact. So you had 4 minutes that when you met somebody, in that 4 minutes, you shaped what you thought about them and what that was like. So you had 240 seconds. I've had somebody who's in Gen Z who told me that she believes that it's at 8 seconds, that in 8 seconds, people are making and is this real or is this nonsense or is this a trap or is this going to be successful or whatever. So as that compresses, as we get that hyper activity and we drive ourselves to that hyperactivity, well, all I can tell you is that hyperactivity can get you crazy. For one thing, is that it gets you into this kind of ADHD thing, and and that's not necessarily good, because that means that you don't have the ability to stick through a plan and make that plan work. So I think that that's part of it, is that just the massive onslaught. Now, this is not going to slow down. In fact, it's going to increase. And now with AI, it's going to change how work is done. It's going to change how communications take place, and it's going to change the interaction that we have with others. And so buckle up, get a helmet on, because we're going to be seeing more of it. So I think if this causes a disruption in Gen Z, more to come, faster, harder, and bigger.
And are you optimistic going forward about this generation?
I'm optimistic because I think that there is an entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that's fantastic. In fact, I love that entrepreneurial spirit, because that means there's a certain amount of risk taking. And that has to be nurtured, it has to be built, and you have to accept, because people will say, well, I understand that, there may be failure, may not be. So now the question is can Gen Z develop the ability to learn from these failures and where that's going to go? They also have access, and because of a lack of fear of technology, is that they are learning outside of traditional environments. This is why I think that universities and colleges, actually all education, is going to be changed dramatically because of AI. So I have a level of optimism of those who are in that Gen Z category. The most important thing that I can say to you if you're in Gen Z is that become disciplined about what you're going to do. Make sure that you learn these things and quit looking for, all of these peripheral, superfluous bullshit things that aren't going to affect your life, and ask yourself this final, or this simple but final question for our session today, which is, when you see something that really bothers you, is that you have to say, look, I need to take action, positive action, not go complain, not go out and mess with other people's lives. It starts with you. And here's the statement. I don't even know if it's a question, but it is probably a question or statement, which is this the hill you want to die on? And I got that from my litigator who helped me out through my 2 bankruptcies. And I've got the whip marks to prove it. And he would say to me all the time, if I was getting really upset, he goes, John, is this the hill you want to die on? And I mean it metaphorically, not physically. So therefore, you have to ask yourself that question, which should center you and bring you back to say, really, is this truly that important? And if it is, then that's the hill you want to die on. If not, then you need to work around it and you need to move forward. And with that, I want to thank you for joining us. I'm John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and for myself and the ever lovely Sandra. Playing hurt today. She's sick. Everybody send virtual positive waves her way. This has been the Raging Verbalist number 217. And go out and become more successful every day, no matter what your generation is, because today is the only day that you have.